recording.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to Action Economy. I forget the name.
Investment opportunities.
There we go. That was my name, and I forgot it immediately.
No, but some people said, most people said, we should do an episode about just like little tips and tricks for newer players for Dungeons and Dragons.
Yep.
Maybe
Tip
kind
number
of a
one.
get started thing.
Tip number 1 is have fun.
All right, that's the end of the podcast.
Hope you all
We did
enjoyed.
I do have one user question. This is from Discord user Paiza. She asks, for people looking to start playing without any prior experience, what would be a good way to know which class, race, etc. to play as? Or which class do you recommend starting with?
Definitely not a magic user.
Well, yeah.
It depends, I think, on how good you are at taking in a lot of information at once. I mean, if you're good with that, you could probably do magic fine.
5e is really good about keeping a lot of basic systems kind of universal with all of the classes. So when you learn one, you do generally learn how everything else works. A lot of the specifics change, though. And like Austin said, magic classes and stuff like that tends to be a little more complicated because
They have an entire other sheet of information
Also,
you have
if
to know.
you're using D&D Beyond, especially as a spellcaster, that'll help you a lot. So
Yeah.
there's that.
yeah, there are resources now to make things way easier.
So I'll give a little bit of advice on this. The first thing to understand, and the first thing to know about D&D in terms of getting started with no experience is, first off, if you're just starting off, use the official stuff. There's a lot of what we term homebrew, which is, custom built stuff. You'll often hear with D&D that you can do whatever you want. It's not exactly true. A lot of people, technically you can do anything, but there's a rule set and stuff in place that makes sense, that keeps things kind of contained. And if you are looking online, because I intend to at least go through a list of some resources for people who are trying to get started and stuff like that, but you want to start with the official races and classes and stuff like that. Don't worry about trying to build something powerful or something.
Yeah, don't try to min-max or anything like that.
Yeah.
Just kind of build what you think works for the character.
What is fun?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the core idea of, when you're starting off is that you want to play something that you can learn how to play with. Most of the magic users just have more complicated stuff. That's pretty much it.
It all comes down to the spell list. They've got an entire spell list, and each spell isn't just straight damage. A lot of them have specific, either augmentations that they can do to any sort of encounter, uses inside and outside of combat. They're another tool in your toolbox of what to use when.
Yeah, but really the core thing about these things is how much preparation do you want to put into playing. If you're going to play and you don't have any of the books and you're going to go someplace, quick build a character before you play and then play, Magic's not going to be good because you're not going to have time to prepare all the stuff needed for a magic user, because you have to go through a whole list of things to choose from and make those decisions ahead of time. Now, if you've got a copy of the book and you can go through it yourself, or
if you've got the books on D&D Beyond.
Yes.
There's also free shit online that I use a lot.
Yeah.
You could go.
Yes. Yeah.
One of the things I use is 5ESRD. It's just a website. It's got all of the original
Basic
stuff, and it also has some of the book stuff, other stuff. But it also has like third-party stuff, so you have to look out for that.
Yeah, and that's what I would suggest avoiding for your first time is try not to get into anything where it's like someone made a slightly customized build or, because you can mod this game however you want. But I don't suggest it for the first time through.
Yeah. We've been modding Starfinder pretty heavily.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
We've chopped it up, just added 5e wherever we want, everything.
So as far as starting off classes and playing for the first time, obviously the go-to for most people is the fighter because it has not that much to it when it starts off.
I actually would almost recommend not starting with the fighter. Personally, I do find the fighter to be like. It's got variety and directions where you can take it during the actual building process of the class. But in some cases, it can feel a little like you'll be presented with options that you don't 100% know are going to be useful in a given situation. I do feel like fighter works better if you're a little bit more familiar with how generally combat overall flows.
Yeah, well, you're kind of going to run into that with every class, but fighter has it's very straightforward, but it has the downside of if you don't know how the system works, it's going to be dull. So fighter is a good one if you really just don't have time and you're just got to build a character really quick before playing, and you don't want to have to make too many decisions when making a character.
I think a really good one is Rogue.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
that
agree
was
with
going to
that
be
one.
my other one.
Because Rogue is like, you could do damage. There's stuff you gotta learn for it, but it's pretty easy to get down. You have an ally within 5 feet, you could stab for extra damage.
Rogue
Yeah.
is a pretty good balance, I think,
Yeah.
where you have a good amount of stuff you can use,
You
but
also
it's not like a spellcaster where you have all this, big long list of stuff.
And it's a lot less boring than fighter if you don't know how to use
Yeah.
fighter.
You're also super
And you do also
fucking
get some
useful.
nice stuff out of combat and stuff like that.
I also would suggest Monk. Monk has some resource management in it, but it's not nearly as taxing as spells can be, because spells you have to deal with spell levels and things like that. Monks, if you want, can have key points, and those key points can be used to do special big cool kung fu moves, or shoot people with energy beams.
And yeah, if you want to, if you want to just not feel in danger, if you want to play a character that's not going to die easy, you can always go with Barbarian.
Yeah.
Barbarian is so fucking broken.
Barbarian is really, really strong, and it's really, really good. The only thing about Barbarian is that you kind of have to go either super generic with it, and you run in and you hit things and you get angry, or you have to go 100% into something kind of really left field. Like, every time you rage, you explode into magic, or something like that.
Well, that's higher level stuff. That's not really... building a Barbarian is very simple for first level. And once again, Barbarian and Rogue, in my opinion, are the two that are best for starting off because they're both similar to Fighter in that they're not super complicated to build, but they're both a bit more fun to play. It's clear what you're supposed to do. If you're the Barbarian, you know what you're supposed to do. If you're the Rogue, you know what you're supposed to do.
But Tom, what if I want to cast spells?
Well then, this is a question for you guys, I guess. Which spellcaster do you think is the easiest to learn?
Wizard.
I'm going to say Wizard as well. Now...
Every other spellcaster has, a special thing with them. Wizard is just really fucking good at casting spells.
Yeah, the main difference between a lot of the other spellcasters and Wizard in my eyes, comes down to wizards have just a big spell book that you have to sift through. All of the other classes have special caveats to when you can use spells, when you can't use spells, how those are used.
And also, Wizard is also super forgiving with their spell list.
Oh, yeah.
You can just write down a whole ton of spells in your spell book, and when you rest, you can swap them out if some haven't been working for you.
Yeah. There's other classes like Bard. Bard, you can't really do that. You do kind of... You pick your spells and you're a bit stuck with those.
Yeah. I do want to get back to Bard in a minute, but...
As a blanket statement, for the most part, all the classes aren't, there isn't a class that's super difficult, all things considered. There are just ones that are a bit easier and a bit more, wow.
I feel...
You may have noticed the audio just cut out. Lasts for about a minute here, but just so you know, we slightly changed topic during this minute or so of lost audio, where we discussed, there's different versions of D&D and pen and paper RPGs. So we figured it was a good idea to specify that we're talking about 5th edition here. Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, as opposed to any of the other ones. And how most of this stuff applies to 5th edition more so than anything else.
It's going to be the easiest for most people to get their hands on.
Yeah, it's absolutely going to be the easiest to get your hands on, and it's most likely going to be the easiest one to learn. So there's the most resources for it. And, of course, there's other pen and paper RPGs that are similar to that are out there. So we're talking about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, which is probably the most prolific one.
Yeah.
And, it's definitely good for starting players. This is an important thing. Not an important thing, but this is kind of how it works. The first 3 levels are kind of like tutorial things. Every class starts at level 1 with a few abilities, and then trickle fed the basics of their class until finally they make a decision at level 3 that sort of like brings them into what the class is meant to be doing and gives you a major choice. So the first 3 levels, are prep. Also, you don't have to start at level 1 necessarily once you understand how the system works.
Start whatever
cool. As long as it's, balanced.
A lot of, when we played 3.5, a lot of our campaigns started at level 5 because back in 3.5 was like a big deal to get past those early levels of kind of just being stuck in one play style. Every edition, I feel like almost every tabletop game does have like a certain level where you really get to spread your wings and try out different variations of a class.
Yeah, I think that's just kind of the nature of it.
Yeah.
So in general, for a starting class, you want to go with whatever you really want to play, first and foremost.
Yeah.
You just got to put in the effort to learn.
Mm-hmm. And then, like we said at the beginning, it's when you learn one class, you do, for the most part, learn everything you need to know to play other classes.
Yeah, so part of it is knowing what the classes are and what they kind of do. 5th edition's pretty good with that if you want to dabble in something else, you can. The first 3 levels are kind of like tutorial levels, and then most classes at level 3 get to split off a little bit and pick some special thing that they get in addition to that. So, like, if you want to, if you were to play fighter for a couple levels, or rogue for a couple levels, and you decided that you liked your character, but you did want to do magic, you can get magic as a fighter or a rogue.
And a magic fighter is what I'm going to be playing in our upcoming campaign. The magic fighter is called Eldritch Knight.
Yeah.
And badass.
I'm still undecided on what class I want to play for that.
Now, Here's a question that I think what would you guys think is the most complicated class to try to play right from the start without knowing anything? Not counting Blood Hunter.
Well, yeah.
Artificer.
I think Artificer.
Artificer's pretty complicated.
Artificer or Ranger. No, I've changed it to Ranger because there are two different versions of Ranger, and you have to figure out which one you're looking at. And I've tried to go to multiple sources, and if you don't have the book and you don't have Ranger right in front of you, either A, that's the correct Ranger, B, it's the shitty Ranger that they decided to upgrade.
Yeah, because they did change it at a certain point because that.
And it's messed up every online thing is not clear on what it is, and every time you look at Ranger it seems to be something different and you can never find definitive information on what it is. Also, it's a class that kind of takes things from Rogue and Druid and Fighter and just mixes it all into one class, so you have to learn basically what you have to do sneaky, what you have to do just fighting, and what you have to do with magic, all while trying to pin down where this information is, definitively.
If you want to dive into the deep end, and you want to do everything, though, got to talk about that Bard.
Bard is a weird amorphous blob of a class, because it can be the simplest, most straightforward thing you want it to be. But it can also be so complicated and so, I feel like it's the ultimate just, blank slate. You can do anything with Bard, more or less. And if you utilize your abilities and your assets creatively, you can pull off, stuff way out of your level.
Yeah. But, Bard and Artificer are definitely probably the two at the top of my list.
Yeah, I would say Artificer probably...
Might throw Warlock in there, too.
Yeah, as far as Artificer is concerned, I find Artificer to be complicated in the sense that you don't really know what you're there for, as a class. You get the opportunity to make a bunch of stuff, and after you make a bunch of stuff, you're then okay, now what?
I mean, but with the upgrade and definitive class from Tasha's, it's a little more defined. And by the way, the Artificer in Tasha's, full boy, can that get crazy.
Yeah, I describe Artificer as the ultimate enabler of a class, because you can take a player's vices and turn them into destructive, horrible, crimes against humanity. Or you could be Iron Man.
Yeah, you could literally be Iron Man.
Yeah, so if you're unaware of how this stuff was released, Wizards of the Coast has put out more and more books over time since 5th edition first started coming out. And each time they put out a new book, they add more abilities, more feats, more stuff that can be used. And it can be hard to keep track of all that stuff. But if you just have the player's handbook, you've got the most basic stuff in there. And most of the complicated stuff is in the other books. If you're going online and getting stuff off of there, you're going to be sorting through a lot of that. And, it can get a little bit...
Yeah, I mean, we talk about getting the books and stuff like that. You can buy the books digitally. You can either get PDFs of them. Genuinely, the most easiest way to get a hold of them is through D&D Beyond now.
I like it in D&D and Beyond because you get to do your characters and everything through that, and then it gives you the options in the character creator and everything.
It sorts everything out for you.
It's very convenient,
yeah,
and I think it's a great resource for new players.
Yeah. D&D Beyond. Call us up.
Yeah. I have D&D Beyond open right now.
I really miss D&D Beyond when we've been playing Starfinder.
Yeah.
I've just been I've been on Roll20 and I've been using that
'Cause you're a
character sheet
loser.
for mine.
I would not recommend Roll20 for any starting off player.
Yeah, no, don't do that. I mean, but
But
if you are playing online, then Roll20 is really good, especially if you do their 5e thing, because their 5e thing has a character mancer that helps you build a character step by step. Except if you haven't bought like the books on Roll20, then there's a lot of stuff missing. Like,
Yeah, it's the same thing with D&D Beyond. If you
Yeah.
don't buy the books on D&D Beyond, you are missing out on a majority of the usefulness of that that asset of
Service.
Yeah, service. I don't know what you want to call it, but
although I would definitely recommend going to D&D Beyond or Roll20, because Roll20 has like a lot of different.
yeah,
It has many different tabletop RPGs, and getting a character sheet at least off of there and figuring out how to work it.
it's actually a good transition to another point that is probably the hardest question for new players. How do I start? Where do I go? What do I do?
I got this one. You know the weird, quiet kids? They probably really like D&D, because that was me.
From everything that I've experienced, Dungeons and Dragons seems to be a game that a lot of people want to play, but nobody ever does.
Yeah, no one does.
So,
Like, literally anybody that, like, isn't like, oh, that's for nerds. Which I've never met anybody who actually is like that. Literally any person ever, I've like, oh, yeah, D&D is this thing and I've been doing this in it. And they're like, oh, that sounds cool. I'd like to play that, but I don't know how. Like, literally everybody.
Yeah. The biggest problem for new people is that they don't know anyone who will DM,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
they
yeah.
don't feel comfortable doing it themselves.
Mhm.
I will say, if you play or anything, if you go on like Discord or something, you can find like a bunch of Discord servers about Dungeons and Dragons, all sorts of tabletop stuff. And
Or
you can find
Roll20.
groups on there.
Yeah, Roll20 also has, like,
Roll20 is an
searches.
in-browser
yeah.
service, so you can use
You
that.
can,
Yeah.
like, search for games in Roll20 and, like, message people back and forth and, like, join a game. Or you can just become Thanos and do it yourself.
Yeah, I do understand people maybe having kind of not wanting to just jump into a game online with a bunch of random
Yeah.
people and like.
There's that, and then I personally don't enjoy it as much online.
Yeah.
A lot of it for me is just, us sitting around and
If you
playing it
can
in the
be
same
face
room.
to face with people and
That is the
actually
best
hang
possible
out,
experience.
Yeah, if you can be
Yeah.
face to face with somebody and actually hang out.
for your first games, it really
That would
is,
help,
It
too.
really is best to
Yeah.
play in person. I know a lot of game shops do have
Oh, yeah.
nights where you can
Yeah, like starter nights and stuff like that.
yeah.
Yeah, that would be a good place to start. Just like go on Google and look for like local hobby shops, that type of stuff. Might be able to find something.
But if you can get like at the very least 2 other people,
Yeah.
that's all you need is 2 other people. Someone bite the bullet and be the DM.
Technically, now you only really need one person, other
Yeah,
than the
I guess.
DM.
Yeah, I
but,
guess technically.
but it would be ideal to have more.
But yeah, like having time and then being able to meet up in person can that can make the entire experience for you.
Yeah.
I do worry that if you were to go online as your first, just because it's easiest, you might run into a bad experience and then
Yeah.
not bother with the game anymore. But yeah, it can be an embarrassing thing to do, just in concept, especially if you're completely new to the idea of role playing or
Yeah.
talking about yourself and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
I've DM'd a lot for people, and the biggest thing isn't like trying to figure out how to do your class or whatever. It's just like the role playing aspect because
getting
nobody.
comfortable with basically embarrassing.
It's been
yourself.
something I've been trying to build on. With this next character, I've got some stuff.
And
No,
it's
I'm
something
thinking of.
that's like, you know, you're never going to walk through the door and be, you know, the God King of RP. You're going to take some time to warm up to the people that you're playing with. Everybody needs to get used to this sort of scenario and stuff like that. So remember that you're people and you're in a room and you're just having a good time playing a game.
Like, I've been playing D&D for literal years now, and I'm not good at role-playing. I'm not good at doing different voices and shit. Like, literally,
I'd say you're good at role playing.
my voice for Nate, I'm just like this, or whatever. I can't really sound too different or whatever.
Yeah, I'm
sometimes
not very
I
good
just,
at doing
like-
voices either.
I drop out of it a lot.
I'll bring up something. I don't know how many of the people who are listening found out about D&D from Critical Role or some of the other ones that are out there of
Like Adventure Zone.
Adventure Zone and
Yeah.
Critical Role are the top two, I would say.
yeah. There's something
Dimension
that
20.
there's something that people talk about online. I've seen YouTube videos from a lot of the D&D YouTubers about it. The Matthew Mercer effect.
Yeah.
If you're watching those shows, it can be, you might get an idea about what you think it's going to be like playing Dungeons and Dragons. Just in terms of Critical Role, that is a show that they are doing. These are people who are coming with the intention of they're playing D&D together. That's 100% what's going on there. But they're also all professionals trying to
Entertain people
at the same time. So they are professional voice actors there's some amount of back and forth improv that they're trying to do. And not every D&D group is going to be trying to run an improv group while they're playing D&D. Some people are just going to be there mostly to hang out.
It's also a very different approach from a DM perspective, trying to make it the best it can be for audio or video or whatever, versus just, a bunch of people playing.
If you're a dungeon master, like, your number one goal should be to make sure that everyone's having fun and having a good time. Like, you don't have to craft some masterpiece story that...
It's okay if there's a bunch of plot holes.
Yeah, it's okay if there's a bunch of plot holes. The way it was described to me is it's like Harry Potter. Harry Potter, at least the movies, are a lot about the just showing off the whimsical nature of the world, and why and how doesn't really matter. Like, you don't really need to think about that. You're just caught up in the immediate moment. And so, as long as people are having fun and everybody's having a good time, you are succeeding at playing Dungeons and Dragons, and you're succeeding as a DM.
Yeah.
Now, as you all get more comfortable, you're all probably going to get a little bit more ambitious with the types of things that you want to do. And that's awesome.
Yeah. I think the most fun to have... oh my god.
He's dying.
Austin's having a bad time today.
I think the most fun to have in D&D is to just get ideas in your head, like, as a GM or a player. Just, like, think of wild shit. And just, like, this would be fun. I'm gonna do it. Like, I make character concepts all the time when I'm just bored at work, or I, like, make up, like, towns and stuff to, like, put into my thing. Like, I'm running a game right now, and I have to, like, pick it up where we left off. They're gonna finish a dungeon, whatever. But they're almost to, like, the final boss, and they need, like, help to get it. I'm just thinking about, like, alright, they're gonna get help from a god, but how would they get help from a god? And I thought of, like, how would gods work in this world? And I just figured, well...
You fall down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. I'm just like, gods will, like, be, like, get their power from worshippers, and, like, how people worship them. Like, these have always been, like, the same gods who have, like, died and been replaced by others, and, like, the worshippers, how they worship the god determines the god's powers and natures and stuff. And they're going to, like, basically save one that's becoming like something that they do not want to be, being like manipulated by this cult, and they're gonna like receive a blessing, get powers and stuff, and they're gonna go fight the big bad guy. And I'm just gonna implement that because I said so.
I will also say it is unbelievably helpful to have somebody, even if they're like, preferably someone that's not part of the game, to just tell what you have plans to.
Yeah.
Because that can get you more confident in that you're making something that's actually going to be entertaining. And also it helps you like solidify what exactly you want to have happen in your head.
It's also good to see, like, just to talk it out. You might see potential issues that you might not have just on your own. Stuff like that.
Yeah. And that's another thing is that there's a certain amount of stuff, especially as a DM, how much do you tell your players? Because if you're just coming up with something, it's one thing if you have players that trust you to make up whatever you want, and they're fine with all that. But they're, depending on who you're playing with, sometimes what the DM has in mind of how they want to play this doesn't match up with what the players want to play. And so there's a couple things that can come about because of this. If you don't talk and figure out, okay, what are we doing here? What do we want out of this? Mm-hmm. Where if the DM's getting frustrated because the players aren't doing what they want, you can end up with a DM that's getting frustrated enough that it starts getting a little bit contentious. And I'm sure if you look around at enough D&D stuff, you'll hear the term killer DM,
murder hobos.
Yeah.
Because if you're coming into D&D from video games, it's easy to take that mindset along with you.
I know I did when I started off. I was like, okay, so when do I get a better sword? Because I've had the beginning sword for a while now, guys.
Yeah. D&D in particular. Now, there's other games that have different ways of looking at this. We've been playing Starfinder, which has leveled equipment up all the way through the levels.
Yeah.
D&D, in particular 5th edition, is very slimmed down. There's not a ton of equipment. A sword is a sword.
Yeah. The big thing for D&D 5e is you get weapons. And there's no better versions of the weapons or anything unless you get really expensive fancy magical weapons. It's a weapon. You get a sword that does a d8 of damage and you can two-hand it. All the weapons have their own little quirks and things that make them good.
The sword doesn't hit harder just because it's a sword bought from a different store.
Yeah, it's you're not going to have an iron sword and then go buy a steel sword and, this does 2d8. No, it's still 1d8. It's still a sword. Mm-hmm. You're still just going to stab with it.
As you level up, you do more damage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's dependent on the player, not the equipment.
Yeah.
And
it makes more sense that way. So.
Yeah.
Now, that said, there is magic equipment that improves your damage, but it's not like a set progression system. If I get the most powerful magic sword in the game, the base damage of that sword is exactly the same as what the base version of that sword is.
This isn't a gear grind.
It just does.
It'll have a bunch of other abilities, other things that happen, you can say a command word and it bursts into flames, and things like that. But for the most part, things are what they are, and the only real major thing that changes in equipment as you level up is how dramatic it is.
Yeah.
The real power comes from your characters leveling up
and your own
their numbers
mind.
going up.
Yeah, the main question that someone might have about that is, why? Why wouldn't I choose, the most powerful weapon? Why wouldn't I choose the most, high AC armor? And the reason why 5e is kind of built the way that it is, with this sort of a sword is a sword and it will always be a sword.
It's never that simple.
Is so that you can decide, hey, I want to play a character that uses a scimitar. Okay, well, here's a scimitar. That's going to stay the same forever, but you will get stronger with that. Mm-hmm. You're not, you're not diminishing your damage output or anything like that.
And with armor too, like, all the armors have, like, different things with them that appeal to different types of characters, and it's not going to be like, oh, I want plate armor because it has the best AC in the game. Well, no, plate armor does have the best... Well, I don't know if it has the best AC.
It's the best AC
Best AC
of any base armor, yeah.
other than, So, like, you could get plate armor and have the highest AC, but it, 1, depends on what your class is proficient with, and 2, even if you're proficient with, like, heavy armor, you might not want that. Because I know I've played fighters before who use light armor because I want
because your dex makes up the deficit that would be there. Because again, your character is what defines your stats, not your equipment.
Heavy armor is just flat. You get this and that's it. That's what you get. Medium is you get flat that armor plus half of your dexterity modifier, and then light armor is that plus your full dexterity modifier, which is usually what like rogues and stuff go with. Because also, medium armor and heavy armor disadvantage on stealth.
Yeah, that's why certain classes that like require light armor and stuff like that aren't going to be left in the dust over a period of time. They're not going to be behind on defensive capabilities.
Yeah, and to the fullest extent, if you want to avoid that entirely, Barbarian and Monk both don't wear armor, and instead of using, armor that they bought, one of their other stats gets added into their defenses as well. Yeah. So with Barbarians, it's
they get very strong.
It's their charisma.
Charisma. Okay.
Yeah, with Barbarians, they're
wisdom.
With Barbarians, it's Constitution.
Yeah.
And with monks, it's wisdom.
I also believe they can wear a shield, too.
Yes, I believe so.
And that makes it even stronger.
Barbarians? I think barbarians...
Barbarians, I know, can use a shield. I'm not sure about monks.
Monks, I don't believe so.
Monks cannot.
Are not proficient.
But then on top of all that, there's even other stuff that, like, as you progress, you can get magical items that increase your armor class as well.
Yeah, that's an important detail, is that there's equipment, and then there's magic items. And there is a distinction between them.
There's equipment, and then there's the cool equipment.
Yeah.
And there's just stuff you're going to use.
The term, because there's
everything.
If you were to go on to D&D Beyond, and you had like some of the books, and you're going to go into the armor list, you're going to be like, okay, these are all slightly better or slightly different and have different abilities. But there's nothing like, this is a game about magic and amazing stuff. Where is my Harry Potter level stuff? That's in another category called Wondrous Items.
Yeah,
which is where the fun stuff is.
Man, I think one of my favorite items was this like glamored scale armor or something. It's like this medium armor. I had my panache swashbuckler rogue use because like you could snap your finger and it literally just changes into whatever clothing you want to be wearing, and like that's what you're wearing now. But it still has the stats of the armor, and so I would use that, and my rogue would basically just snap her fingers, and she's a shapeshifter, so I'd shapeshift into a person, put on their clothes, and, like, just break into areas because I'm supposed to be there now.
Now, this is an important detail in terms of the video game mentality coming into this. This is, you're playing a game. And when you're playing D&D, you're playing a game that is essentially managed by a person as opposed to by a computer. So programming is obviously not a thing. So depending on how good the DM is and what they're doing, most anything that you could physically do in real life, you can just say, I do this.
But there also, that means, is real-world implications.
Exactly.
And expectations. Like, you can't just be like, well, I slap a basket on the man's head and now he can't see me steal all his 7 apples. Because the second you do that, the man's going to be, hey, why the fuck did you put a basket on my head? Lift it up and go, why'd you take my apples?
Here's the most common
What's happening?
Here's the most common one where this scenario comes up. A player gets in trouble and they will say, well, I hide. That's not going to fly depending on what DM you have. There could be a DM who's like, okay, sure, yeah, you find some place to hide and lay low or whatever. But then there could be another DM who's like, where?
Yeah.
I've described to you what the room is. Where do you hide?
Or
How
like-
do you hide?
Or how do you talk your way out of this?
Yeah. Or the dude is watching you.
Yeah.
Where, like, how are you just gonna magically hide?
I encountered this in the early stages of the Eberron campaign, where I was like, oh, I want to, like, I want to lie my way past this guard to get into this cool section of the train. And Tom was like, okay, what do you tell him? I was like, fuck.
I didn't think I'd get this far.
I didn't think I'd get this far. And I did. It worked. But then, again, human interaction, I was like, oh, I'm this rich family's kids. Let me in. And he was like, okay, well, let's go talk to your parents. And he walked with us because that's what a normal person would do.
Now, here's an important thing about that. You succeeded.
Yeah.
You succeeded in convincing the guy. You lied to him and had to roll, and you succeeded.
Just because he believed my lie doesn't mean that he does what I wanted him to do.
Yeah.
It just means that
he acts upon that lie.
Yeah, he just is like, okay, well, this is the truth. Let me go bring these children to their family because they're dumb.
Yeah.
And even after the lie was revealed, he didn't go hostile and start stabbing you.
Yeah.
Like, no, if a kid lies to you and tries to get in this, what does he do? Let's find your real parents and ask some questions.
I also feel like, I know that you didn't do this because we can't just keep doing this over and over and over again, but, like, there's these two Kalistar children, and he walks back, alright, where are your real parents? We don't have parents. Who's watching after you? This goblin and this and this dwarf woman. Hold on, what? What? And, like, these children are armed, and the two people that they pointed out
also armed.
Yeah, are also heavily
He took
armed.
the knife from you.
Yeah, he did.
We
But
got
we
it
were
back.
still armed. We were armed.
Well, one of you was a sword, so...
Yeah, that's
You're
true.
always armed.
But like actual like fully like armor and stuff. Everybody like I feel like if we had the time to play this out every single time it happened, which we didn't because it happened a lot, I feel like he would have questioned, what the fuck is happening? Why are these children with these armored people? What are they doing?
Well, it's Eberron. It's
Yeah.
not that, he's not going to bat an eye at a what he would perceive as a goblin and halfling couple with two Kalashtar children because it's Eberron.
And here's the thing. This is why D&D is so cool, is if Tom were a different DM for that scenario, that could have played out completely different.
Yeah, it all depends on like the DM and what they're doing, and you
So-
gotta like, and sometimes like even like as a player or whatever, like you shouldn't like just straight up argue with your DM,
No,
but like if you
I mean,
have
you're
a
there
point,
to have fun. You're
Yeah.
not there to argue.
you're
about
there to have
semantics.
fun. You're not there to argue. But like the cool thing about D&D is you can like bring up points that you're like, hey, wait a minute, like. Wouldn't this happen?
Yeah.
And your DM would be like, "Oh, maybe not."
Yeah, I think
like,
this is
you
a
can
good-
like,
totally happened in our Starfinder campaign.
Yeah.
You guys have brought up like, hey, shouldn't this? And yeah,
Yeah.
all right. Well, I guess that.
I think this goes to a point I was going to bring up where we talked a bit about how tensions can come up in groups.
Mhm.
And I think it's important to say that there is a lot of different like play styles or how people will play will be different from group to group.
Yeah.
How you mesh with them as a group will change. So if you don't feel one group, it doesn't necessarily mean they're bad at it or whatever. You just might not be a good fit. Like there's some groups that are more combat heavy. There's some groups that are more role play heavy.
And it could even just be the game itself.
Yeah,
Playing
that's
could
it.
not be a good fit for the group. Like,
oh my god, I was like recommended the Waterdeep Dragon Heist by a lot of people. That's really, really heavy roleplay and investigation and all this other stuff with not too much combat in
Which
it.
I love personally, but I know...
I do love it, but like my players really wanted to stab stuff.
Yeah.
And like there's entire like acts of the entire campaign that are not combat oriented, and you have to just like figure out puzzles and stuff.
Yeah, even within like the official modules, there'll be stuff that some players won't care for, but other players will love, and
We never
vice
even
versa.
talked about modules.
No, we did not.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
But before we do that, just one more thing on like players and DMs and like groups and stuff. You gotta remember, it's not just about you. For DMs and players, just everyone. D&D is like a story that everybody is telling together, and you can't just think of it as, oh, this is my story. It's everyone's story, and everyone has to have a good time.
The DM is not building a video game for you to play.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a story. The DM
He is reacting from you, and you are
working.
reacting from them. It's back and forth.
All of you are working together to create an overall story that was compelling.
Yeah, like last podcast, the Market Crash episode. Me and Tom and Travis and Chris.
I was thinking that.
I was like, oh shit.
The one you're around probably the most.
Yeah, I know.
It took me 3 sessions to remember to consistently remember your name.
Yeah, but he works with me, and he's like with me constantly.
We all like were talking about our characters and stuff, and you might have noticed like I was definitely getting excited when we were talking about how our characters worked and like our personalities and stuff. And like if you're playing a game, like a video game, it's all centered around you. If you're doing a story, you want like the best for your character, and that's all that's going down, and you just like want the good stuff to happen to you. In D&D, like you're wanting to tell a story. You're wanting to make things interesting, things that like can happen. Like when Tom was like, "Oh yeah, Fish is like straight and like gets on with people, but she's an absolute fucking sociopath and like would manipulate Nate if she knew what was going on." That made me excited because I was like, "Oh, Nate absolutely wants to be with her and is dumb as fucking hell and would be absolutely useful to her." I think it'd be like a really interesting storyline where Nate reveals to her that she wants to like be with her, and then Fish just kind of like manipulates that. See how it plays out.
Yeah. This is one thing when it comes to rolling dice in D&D, relating directly to that, is that sometimes you roll the dice and you get a bad result, and it hurts. You want it to be good, but you have to look at that as an opportunity for something bad to happen to your character that you can roleplay and have fun with.
Yeah.
I think the most fun of Dungeons and Dragons comes to role-playing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, role-playing is probably the second biggest hurdle for any new player. It's super embarrassing to do, especially if you've never done it before, or anything like that. Unless you're like a theater kid or whatever.
It is worth saying, you don't necessarily have to act it out at first.
Yeah.
You can just be like, oh, well, my character says this.
Exactly.
That type of stuff.
You don't have to do voices at all.
My first advice to someone who's new, who's like nervous about role-playing or isn't super comfortable with it, is you don't have to voice your character all the time. You can describe what you do. I do it all the time when I'm just not feeling it. I'll just describe what my character does. And the other thing is you will also feed off of the people that you're playing with. So if you've got like 1 or 2 people who are really good role players, you will just naturally start to slowly work into it.
Yeah.
The second big thing is to focus on yes and. It's a big...
I would say that's good, yes, but there are times when you like your character would say like, "Hey, stop doing that."
Yeah.
Yes. As far as keeping to who your character is, yeah, you definitely need to do the things your character would do. But as far as getting yourself as a person into being more comfortable with role playing, I found that to be one of the easiest ways to kind of working out generally what they want to do with their characters together.
Yeah, you don't want to fill too many holes because you want to leave some there to fill in later.
Yeah. Like, I've had characters that I'm just like for example, the swashbuckler rogue I was talking about.
Yeah.
All I had for her in the very beginning was, she's a shapeshifter that doesn't want people to know she's a shapeshifter. She's a rogue, and, like, was a pirate a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, like, building a backstory as I was acting out and doing stuff
It's absolutely
in the
alright
campaign.
to do that.
Yeah.
And, I
think just in playing a lot of characters, things that you do during the session in the moment will start informing sort of what your character is, and you just kind of build from there.
It's a big I don't want to use the word crutch, but it kind of is. A lot of players will oftentimes build up a big, huge backstory for their character before even bringing them to the table. And all of their character is in their backstory. And then when they're at the table, they're making decisions and they're doing things that just seem kind of normal. And nobody ever asks them about their character's backstory. And they never get to explain it to anybody. And that's because all of the interesting stuff for your character has already happened.
Yeah.
Other players aren't going to worry about who you were until you've hooked them. They'll care about what you do at the table.
I think that, like...
I said a really quick thing and we went off on 17
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
tangents.
That's how this... I mean, it's just us rambling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much. I think that, like... Basically, your character's personality necessarily mesh with what it becomes when you're playing it. So it's probably not the best idea to go all in at that point.
And there are tools during character creation that will help you kind of give you a little bit of a guideline, but they're vague enough to let you play with that idea more. And I think one of the biggest examples of recent memory for me was Copper in our Eberron campaign. That character had no backstory. Apart from one thing, which was he stole a book from our library. Other than that, he was an NPC. He was nobody. But the events of the actual campaign, like we talked about earlier, those first 3 levels, those defined who he was as a character as we moved forward. And then after that, the character took off into becoming a Neko god. So... you'll kind of suck in the energy from the people around you, and they will do the same from you. So, RP and stuff like that is like a snowball. It will, once one person starts with it, everybody else will slowly get into it, and then you can really, really start experimenting, throwing super unique and cool characters at each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I would mention is that it can be fine to write the backstory of your character for yourself if you want that in your mind, but don't expect something that you've written to be incorporated into the game.
Yeah.
Like, don't hand the DM a page like, this is my character's backstory, and expect them to make things fit with what they've planned out.
It could be cool.
It could be cool, but if the
it's
DM...
one thing to suggest it, and then to be like, okay, well, put this in there.
Or if you, know what's going on and what this, game is going to be, and, you write backstory that's based off of that, having a character that works with the story could be cool.
I will say, for what I'm thinking of for my character for the next campaign, I'm completely fine with Tom doing something with it if he wants to. But that's his choice. He's the DM.
Yeah, and this is the thing: is
matters whether or not it's organic or not.
Yeah, actually, people people heard us. In the last ramble that we did, we all talked about what do we want from the campaign?
Yeah.
What are our basic ideas for our characters and stuff? I said I wanted to make a serious character.
Yeah,
that was also edgy.
That's the.
I think everybody in this room is doing serious edgy, and we're just staring down the road at that empty road. What's Jesse gonna do?
Yeah. What's he gonna do?
Oh, here comes another Santa Claus.
Oh no! We all stabbed Santa to death. Oh no, I'm the Santa now.
Santa Claus.
No, if you
You're just gonna play Tim Allen, a serious character.
no, if you have stuff you want to do in a backstory, don't make it up in a vacuum. Talk to your DM and figure out,
Yes.
like, hey, I want my character to have a backstory that's involved in this, and find out what they're planning in terms of like the world and what the setting is. Maybe give them some hooks and go back and forth. And if you want surprises for yourself, give the DM something. If they like, hey, I've got an idea for this, but it would reveal too much of the story.
Like Chris said, also
Exactly.
You can do it with other players too.
Yeah.
The backstory can be incorporated with everyone else's backstory, and that can make super interesting. And it can have players be invested in other players' characters.
Yes, because one of the problems with early games of D&D, like starting off a campaign, can be, okay, why are we all here? Why are we working together? Why would we bother working together? Especially if you have characters whose moralities don't line up. You can either put that all on the DM to make him come up with a reason to force them to stay together, and I've known players who are like insistent on, well, my character wouldn't want to work with this person, and so they keep on fighting it and keep on fighting it. It's like, okay, what, do you want to leave?
We just had. I just transitioned from one character to another in our off-cast fighting game that we're playing.
Our off-cast one is like a real good example of all these things.
Yeah, pretty much.
So Austin and Chris, their characters have a history together.
Yeah.
And their characters are like, it feels like they're conjoined at the hip. Like,
Yeah.
they are two characters, but it feels like they're one character.
That's kind of just us in real life, to be honest.
Yeah. And I played a character for a while. Jesse's still playing his character. I didn't like my character, so I asked everyone in the group, hey, I'm thinking about changing. Everyone was okay with it. Please make sure that everybody's okay with it before you do anything like this.
Yeah.
And,
or just get yourself killed.
Yeah, or just get yourself killed. No, don't do that.
But don't do, like, I'd say...
Just jump off a cliff. It won't affect everyone else.
Have some sort of justification and things like that.
But don't be like one of the players I had where he wanted to keep switching characters.
Oh my god.
And to do
All
that...
right, guys, I'm going to play a different character every week.
Yeah, to do this, he purposefully got himself killed many times. I think he died, like, actually 3 or 4 times in the campaign. And one of them was just because he kept drawing from the deck of many things until he died.
I'll say this. If you are the type of person who can't help yourself, but you're continuously making characters in a single campaign, you can't just stick with one, maybe try and DM a game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then you get
That'd
to
be
play
real
multiple
good.
characters.
But, a little bit more on point, Pebble, little kobold character that I was switching to. You guys basically just picked him up like he was a pet.
Yeah.
And that was good enough.
Yeah.
He was literally like, I'm going to become the strongest and I need power. And I was like, can you fight? And he's like, can I fight?
But the difference is it's not just, you didn't just walk up and go, would you like to join us? And I went, yes. No, there was some sort of, we stayed in character, we played around a little bit.
His character was...
And then you're like, do you want to come with us?
Yeah.
And you're
It
like,
was an
yes.
organic decision in the
His-
moment. You know?
It felt like a right time to ask.
Yeah.
The whole situation was like, his character left after our characters got off a boat to go talk to this dude. His new character was talking to the dude, and we came in, and there was this whole altercation that his dude had with this, like, little person. His character, I believe, was going to try and steal something from me.
Pebble was trying to steal anything shiny that anybody had if he thought he could get away with it. And kobolds are notoriously like super big-headed and think they can get away with anything. So, the first thing when all of them walked in was I asked Tom, do they have shiny things on them? And it's like, yeah, they've got shiny stuff on. Okay, I'll bide my time, and I'll wait until the perfect opportunity to try and steal something.
Yeah.
And it's not like you're a thief.
No, I just want that shiny thing, and I know I can get it, even though I can't.
It's basically like an animal kind of mindset. Just like, oh,
Yeah,
it's shiny.
Yeah.
And, like, our characters were talking and stuff, and my character liked this dude because he just seemed real funny.
Yeah.
And I saw him fight and knew he could fight. Because there was, like, a tavern brawl, and he summoned, like, entire dragon fists to go fight this dude. And so I was like, screw it, we're going to, like, some cool party. This guy might, like, provide some entertainment for people. He might
You'll
like
do
it too.
that.
There's
And,
a dog about now.
Yeah. So he joined the party.
Yes, the dog joined the party.
Yes. There's also, like, really cool and creative shit you can do with Dungeons and Dragons and, like, just, like, make fun little mini games work. Like, 2 examples are, one, my character's from Eberron. I want to run a one-shot campaign that's like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and the players will all, like, go through a bunch of mini games and basically just play Mario Party, but in Dungeons and Dragons, to, like, win the factory.
You can replicate most board games in D&D.
Yeah.
Alright, guys, let's do Candyland for our next campaign.
And,
Done.
Damn.
yeah.
It's already been done, and I already have a pre-planned version of that.
Oh.
If we were to do something like that, I have characters. I have.
Alright, then.
That's something I planned a long time ago that never played.
And also, a second, like, thing is, I saw this idea for a campaign where you'd have all the players make, like, mid-level druids, and all of them have to have the animal companion. And when the campaign starts off, you have every single druid get kidnapped, but then have the players play as their animal companions trying to get the druids back, and that's the campaign.
That's amazing. I love that idea.
Yeah.
I've had so I've played around with an idea of doing like a sort of like Sliders type of Scooby-Doo mystery, have everybody be a bunch of like teens or whatever going on some sort of adventure, and they're constantly getting teleported or moved to different worlds or things like that.
I will say we're getting a little bit away from like what would be helpful for newer players.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is just
who cares about that?
This is just hopeful in general, because, like, you don't have to just be like, alright, medieval fantasy setting, we're gonna go stop the demon.
Yeah,
king.
that is a very
let's
important
go
point,
fight
actually.
or whatever.
Yeah.
You don't have to stick to
Yeah.
like that kind of generic type of setting.
You can
You
do
can do
whatever
sci-fi
you
if you want. You can do pretty
yeah.
much anything.
Let me put it this way. There are different, if you're not familiar with the terminology, you have Dungeons and Dragons, which is based on the D20 system. So the whole framework of dice and rolling and stuff like that is the D20 system. There's other games that use the D20 system. Dungeons and Dragons uses it. But if you're familiar with a lot of like novelization stuff and things, you might know that there's been like a couple Dungeons and Dragons movies that have nothing to do with any story from Dungeons and Dragons, because most of these are, it's Dungeons and Dragons. You can make up whatever you want. But there are, like, Dungeons and Dragons itself doesn't have a setting with a world with, set characters and things like that. But the people who made Dungeons and Dragons, as well as other people who are now involved in it and have been involved in it, there are settings where those are self-contained worlds in which it was built in D&D and for D&D, but there's also novels, there's comics, there's stuff like that.
Video games.
Yeah.
Has there
Some
been-
people may be familiar with Forgotten Realms from a lot of
Yes.
the games.
Have there
Yeah.
been, like, books or any other media for Curse of Strahd yet?
I want to say yes, but I've not taken... Yes, there are comics.
Yeah.
There's Curse of Strahd comics. I've seen
Which,
bits and pieces of those.
Curse of Strahd is, like, the module when you play 5e. The module everyone talks about, everyone loves. It's, like, the most popular one. I think.
Yeah, I would definitely say it is.
Yeah, and it's what we're going to be playing after...
Yeah, because they're
Yeah,
releasing new
first
content.
Yes. But just so you're aware, the main one for Dungeons and Dragons is Forgotten Realms. All the stuff in the 5th edition books is built off of focusing on Forgotten Realms and off the lore from that. That's not always been the main one. But Forgotten Realms is the high fantasy setting. If you want to... the world is called Faerun. I think the world's called Faerun. World of the Continent, one of the two. It's got a ton of novels, a ton of comics. If you've ever heard of Drizzt Do'Urden, that character, that is from Forgotten Realms. If you've ever played Baldur's Gate, Neverwinter Nights, Icewind Dale, those are all set in that universe. And it's very Lord of the Ringsy, but with more magic and stuff. But it's got that kind of feel to
Sick
it.
80s cartoon show.
Exactly. Now, compare and contrast that to Greyhawk. Greyhawk is the older Dungeons and Dragons setting, which is very different. I'm not 100% sure how it's pronounced, but that world is called Earth. It's Earth, but Oearth.
Interesting.
It's a lot more along the lines of everything is named after something in the real world. So it's like some slightly misspelled version of it.
Sword Diego.
or names that are scrambled. A lot of the major figures in Greyhawk are the player characters that the creators of Dungeons and Dragons made, that they played as when they played the game. So and Greyhawk is a lot more of a sword and sorcery kind of setting. It's more along the lines of closer to Conan the Barbarian, or some of the more serious magic settings. Game of Thrones might be pushing it. That's a little too low magic, but, it's generally darker.
The Witcher is probably a good...
Yeah, Witcher's probably be a good one. And then there's the opposite end of the spectrum. Eberron.
Hell yeah.
Eberron is a place where if you want to buy a magic item, you can go to your local department store and get a designer...
a designer bag of holding.
And then...
Magic Costco.
Fantasy Costco.
Fantasy Costco, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is magic airships.
I want a car. I want a gun. I want to be able to do drive-bys.
Yeah.
Goals.
You can.
Yes.
Yeah, you 100% can. It's almost cyberpunk. It's so far in terms of technology.
Like super high fantasy steampunk.
If you really need a visual help, I guess. What is the game called? Arcanum. Something of Steamwork, whatever the subtitle of it is. But it's an old point and click, Neverwinter style game that is basically Eberron.
Yeah, the main city in Eberron is it's basically Magic New York City. It's almost like Coruscant in the way from Star Wars, in the way that it's set up.
I'm glad that you clarified from Star Wars.
Well, just saying Coruscant is what I thought about. I was like, there might be people who don't know that specifically that Coruscant is a Star Wars thing.
Well, I always envisioned it. This is stupid, but I always envisioned it as a mixture of Cloud City and Minas Tirith.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I can kind of see it. I kind of get what you're getting at.
Yeah, so it's funny. I like to describe it as a magical New York City because the way that it's described, it's almost supposed to be like a 19th century...
you can do a noir thriller.
Yeah. In fact, that's
streets.
encouraged
Yeah.
in
I used to do
Eberron.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That'd be down.
At some point.
Yeah. Another one for the long list.
Yeah.
So another thing, there's a bunch of other ones too. There's Ghostwalk, Dragonlance, lots of other campaign settings.
Believe it or
Dragonlance
not,
is
Dungeons
another
and Dragons has been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you look up a list of them, you'll find that there are a lot. And there's constantly more because just about every DM makes up their own.
Yeah.
I'm in the process of making up my own.
And then
So-
you've got third-party published stuff, too,
Yeah.
so...
Isn't there one that's like Greek mythology based?
Yes.
Yeah, there is.
Oh,
I'm guaranteed
Mythic-
there is.
Yeah, you
Mythic
could
Odyssey
just
of
stop
Eberron?
that sentence at, isn't there one? And then the
Yes.
answer would be
Yeah.
yes.
I kind of want to do a Mythic Odyssey.
That would be
of
pretty
Theros.
sick, though.
I want a fucking Gladius. That's it.
Yeah, it's known as a short sword.
Yeah.
That's yeah. Yeah, when you're depending on what setting you're in, the world's going to be completely different.
Yeah. And like going back to the whole like Harry Potter thing, if you're deciding to create your own, you don't have to go through the whole process of every single facet of every single NPC needs a whole cycle of life that they go through.
Yeah, you don't have
It
to
doesn't
make
need to
up
be a
your own
Bethesda
language.
game.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to make up a new language. You don't have to.
You don't have. You can.
Yeah.
You totally can. But you don't have to.
If you want to, that's a sick project, but...
Yeah. Just note that if you're DMing and you're doing that, there is always, for anything that you do, there's always a chance that a player or all of the players will never interact with that.
Yep. Also, I've kind of just realized we technically didn't answer the second part of the question,
what was the second part
Yes.
of the
which
question?
was like, what race is good to start with?
I was going to come back around to that,
Yeah, let's go.
and I have a straight up answer.
Let's go to races.
Any of them.
When it comes, yeah,
Yeah, that's basically what I was thinking. Like, you could sit there and, like, min-max it, like, okay, I get +2
I do that.
wisdom for this.
I'm
I mean,
always
just-
guilty of doing that sometimes.
I do that sometimes.
But like, it's really just anything,
But
even if it's detrimental to like the class. Technically,
Okay, I've got two things to say.
It can
here.
still
one is
work.
about one is the question. The other one is actually on min maxing. So I'll start with the races. As far as like numbers go, your race rarely matters.
yeah, it's not that big of a difference.
if
not a
you
big
min max though, it matters.
It's not a big deal in the long run. There's very little about your character apart from just their starting stats that are affected by your race. Some races have specific racial abilities that can be super cool, and it can synergize with your class real well.
Yeah.
But choosing what race you want is always a choice of, is that going to be a facet of your character?
Yeah. Race matters far more in terms of story than stats, really.
Yes. The type of person that you want to play and the way that you want them to play should inform what sort of race or races should be options for you. Or, depending on how you create your character, could be vice versa. You could see a race and go, that's super cool, I really want to play a character like that, and then the rest of the character comes through.
Mm.
And like one thing I've been toying around with as a character concept was I've wanted to play a what are they called? I've forgotten what they're called. I wanted to say Simic Hybrid, but that's not what it was.
Tabaxi?
No, the people that have like just like bits of them are animal bits.
Oh, the
Shifter.
shifters.
Yeah. I've wanted to play a shifter for a really long time that like the majority of his head was like an owl's head. And I wanted to.
The only thing I thought of when you said that was a dude with an owl head, except the beak is a human mouth.
Oh no! Oh no! Take it back.
Just,
Take it away.
hello, Mario.
If anybody's ever played Soul Calibur 3, Ulcaden. No, yeah, like, and the rest of the character came from the idea of wanting to play that race. And then, to bring him up again, Pebble. Pebble's personality is the way it is because he's a kobold. And that's the way kobolds act. Or at least that's the way some kobolds act.
that's the way underground tribal like families of kobolds act. Because
So-
I will say that the
the
kobolds in our campaign,
It's not recorded. They leave me alone.
the kobolds in our campaign, you can act on this if you want. Are kind of like Oh, he's
Oh, this one's stupid.
kind of. It's like we should watch out
Bless
for him.
his heart.
Yeah. He's a bless his heart kind of kobold.
There's a quote.
So, as far as min-maxing goes, this is something that, min-maxing is, in general, kind of looked down upon, mainly because oftentimes people that min-max will sacrifice fun for themselves and fun for the group to be quote-unquote good.
Yeah,
but understand that min-maxing also isn't just completely evil and flat bad.
Yeah.
I mean, there's optimizing a build and there's min-maxing. I feel like there's a fine line there.
As a person in real life, you learn skills that you think have some sort of value to you that you're going to use. Whenever you learn something in real life, you're min-maxing real life to some extent.
Well,
so it does make sense for a person in a fantasy world to want to learn specific skills that they believe are going to be useful.
yeah, if if a character wants to be the best at something, they're going to make sacrifices to get that.
Yeah.
And because if you're not familiar with the term min-maxing, the idea comes from that you let some things get to be really bad with your character to get certain things really, really high so that you're really, really powerful in a certain area.
Think like Fallout when you lower your intelligence.
Exactly.
And Scorpion.
Or I can't pick a lock at all. I don't know how to pick a lock, but I can stab people in the back real good.
Yeah, and that's where the minimum, maximum, min-max comes from.
Yeah.
The thing about it, too, is, min-maxing, I think, is completely okay if, everybody's, on board with it and knows what, is happening. I've had this campaign in the past where we were going to do the Horde of the Dragon Queen, and we were playing through. I made a paladin who was, supposed to be, this real cool... I was the defender of people. I wanted to, I wanted to defend people. That was my job. I would not let innocents die on my watch. There were other people, forget what classes they played, but there was one guy who played a fighter. Had this whole backstory, how he was, this cool fighter guy, and had, a title and everything. He was, some knight. He chose Polearm, and got the feat Polearm Master, because he was a human. And let me tell you, that basically ruined every fucking enemy encounter there was, because he took Polearm Master as a feat, and he built his character to be so strong that he could sit behind my character, who was a walking tank, and would protect people. So he would be protected while reaching over my shoulder with a polearm, hitting enemies as they came into threat range, hitting them while it was his turn, and hitting them when they left his threat range.
Yeah.
And
to just give a little bit of context, polearms and spears have increased range. You can hit basically around your allies with them.
yeah. But, he built this character, he min-maxed it so hard that there was some boss that wasn't supposed to be, killed at all in the first one. He almost took down this boss with this character until the DM, made the character use, a breath attack on him. But I just didn't want to do combat scenarios because it was just this guy killing everything with a polearm.
There was no interesting...
I will say,
dynamics.
we did say, you're not there to complain or whatever, but if you do have, genuine grievances, you can go to the
General
DM.
grievances.
General Grievous. General Grievous is giving you
General Kenobi!
General Grievous is giving you problems. You are human beings. You can talk to each other.
Yeah, you're legally allowed to open up that ribcage and shoot that boy in the heart.
Yeah. It's not a hate crime.
It's not a hate crime if they're a robot.
But, I mean, generally,
They're not real people.
The action economy does not condone murder.
if you have a good DM and your request is reasonable, they will try to find some way to improve whatever it is that you're not happy with.
Yeah. At the end of the day, if you're having problems with
But do keep in mind, the DM has a pretty hard job, between the story and keeping track of all that stuff and trying to make sure everyone's happy, filling everyone's needs.
And as like a GM and a player, just get this out of the way right now. There are rules, but they're more like guidelines than actual rules. The rules are there to make sure everything like stays grounded and everything, but like it's not word for word. You have to follow these exactly.
It's to the DM's discretion.
It's to the GM's discretion. You have to like let people have fun. Like I was gonna ask Tom after this or whatever that
right
I wanted.
now.
Or right now.
Do it right now.
Right now, let's give a live demonstration.
live demonstration.
Sample, everybody.
I was gonna be like, "Hey Tom, my character for the Curse of Straw campaign. I want she's gonna be Eldritch Knight, so I wanted her to be magic, but she would have had magic before. So could I have a shitty cantrip or something that I could use before being an actual Eldritch Knight? And there's nothing in the rules that would allow me to do this. There's nothing at all. But, I'm just gonna go, hey, I would be magic. Can I get, something that shows my magical prowess before it technically allows me to do so? And Tom could be like, well, maybe, maybe not, and he could decide.
What race were you going with?
Human.
Or human? Oh, human. Well, let's see here. Because there is a rule set thing now for that sort of thing. Just as a quick peek into the...
No, wait, I'm not... The race is Revenant.
Oh, Revenant, okay.
Yeah. I forgot that's the race.
You mean Reborn?
I have no idea.
Yeah, that's what they're actually called, Reborn. Which isn't officially released yet and isn't complete. It's still in the Unearthed Arcana version because it's coming out in the next book that's coming out.
Oh shit, I'm gonna build my character with the new thing from the new module and the new thing? Hell yeah.
All three of us are.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then we just look down that lone empty road.
It'll be really interesting.
But what's Jesse
I'm gonna
doing?
play human.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm not me.
No, I know. I got what you're...
Okay.
Yeah.
The way that you said that made it sound like you thought that I was going to play
So
stinky human.
In Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, they added a new thing called Customize Origin, essentially, which lets you change up the details of a race.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you want to swap stuff out or add something, you can do that. So,
Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, favorite book by far right now.
It's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
Now, I will say, on D&D Beyond, this is kind of a hassle to incorporate in, but it is doable to add this in. I would more likely just add in a feat, because this is one thing to keep in mind for a DM. You can just add feats to characters. There's rules as to when they get them, but you can give feats to players because in-game they did something that caused it to happen.
Yeah.
And you can just add it onto the character. So for your character to have this, there's a couple feats that I would just slap onto your character that might work. I'll take a look at them to see what they are, but they can grant you cantrips. And I think there's one specifically that fits this. I don't remember what it's called exactly off the top of my head. It is Shadow Touched, I think. Might do something. Let me see what Shadow Touch does. Shadow Touched, and you can either choose Wisdom, Intelligence, or Charisma. Means you're exposed to the Shadowfell's magic in terms on here. However, that's negative energy, undead, works that way.
Yeah.
So you can choose your Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma that go up by 1 because of this, and you learn the Invisibility spell and 1 first-level spell of your choice. And it must be from either Illusion or Necromancy.
That's cool as fuck. That works exactly with the character I was thinking. And there you go. There's an example.
Look into the creative process, collaborating.
Yeah. You can't just be like, hey, I'm magic, so I have this spell. I want it.
Yeah.
You have to, go to your, GM and go, hey, I was thinking about doing this. And you gotta, talk with people. You gotta,
It's a social
come
game,
up with
believe it or
things.
not.
Yeah. Role-playing in my role-playing game? What the fuck?
Yeah, and there's other ways that I could have gone about that because there's a bunch of feats in this, and this is the feats are an optional rule. They didn't used to be, but as the game has written, rules is written, you get feats whenever you would, like as you're leveling up, you get opportunities to raise your stats. You get to pick 2 ability scores and raise them. Or, instead of doing that, you can choose a feat. That's the optional rule. Some DMs don't even allow them. However, feats are kind of there to help customize your character. So, if you have something you're trying to build and you can't build it through the class and race and stuff like that, there's a lot of stuff in the feats that you can use to alter a character. And that's DM's discretion. If the DM decides that you've got a feat, you've got that feat. You might not have even tried to get it or wanted it. I played around with Travis's character Copper a couple times and just dropped a couple things on him. And it happened. So, especially with this type of thing, when you want just a little bit of magic, because there's a bunch of different ways to get it. There's all these initiate feats, which is like, oh, I'm a human fighter, but I'm also a artificer initiate. So I know 1 cantrip from the artificer spell list, 1 first level spell, and I am now proficient in artisan's tools of a kind. So, or you can go with Eldritch Adept, which means that you get a little bit of the warlock stuff. And then there's, the touched ones. There's Fey touched and Shadow touched are the 2 ones that I know of off the top of my head. And those both give you a little bit of abilities based on what they're connected with. Or you can take Magic Initiate, which means that, I'm a rogue and I stab people, but, I also learned some magic. And so I learned some magic of this stuff. And it works the other way around. You can play as a wizard and take Martial Adept, which means you know some of the martial skills of a fighter. So there's lots of little ways to slightly alter a character to make them a little bit more what you want if you want to mix stuff.